The iron was hot. You could see the red color coming from the metal. You could see the heat shaking in the air around it. The sound it made was like a snake hissing in the desert. Smoke came up from it. The smell was very bad. It was the smell of burning things, burning skin, burning hair, burning hope. Old Buck was tied to a wooden post in the center of the ranch yard. His legs were spread wide. His body could not move. Ropes were around his neck, his body, his legs. He was a beautiful Mustang horse. His coat was brown and gold, like the desert sand in the late afternoon sun. He had wild eyes and a strong spirit. But now his eyes were filled with terror. The man holding the hot iron was named Jake Redstone. He was the boss of the Blackstone Ranch, the biggest and most cruel ranch in the whole territory. Jake was tall and mean-looking. His face was burned from the sun. His hands were scarred and ugly. He wore a dark shirt that was wet with sweat. On his belt was a gun. On his face was a smile that showed no kindness at all. Just cruelty. "Hold him still," Jake shouted to the other men around him. There were 5 men working on the ranch. They were all strong and mean. They all worked for Jake, and they were all afraid of him. These men pulled on the ropes. They held Buck as tight as they could. The horse tried to move. He tried to pull away. He screamed a loud, terrible sound that echoed across the empty desert. But he could not escape. The morning was just starting. The sun was orange and low in the sky. Long shadows stretched across the ground like dark fingers reaching for the horse. It was hot already, and the day was just beginning. There was no wind. There was no water anywhere, just rocks and dirt and emptiness. The ranch was far from the town, far from help, far from anyone who might care. Buck was a wild horse. 3 weeks ago, Jake's men had caught him running free in the desert. They had brought him to the ranch to break his spirit, to make him obey, to make him into a working horse instead of a free horse. But Buck was strong. Buck had not been broken yet. So today, Jake was going to use the iron, the branding iron. This was the day they would burn the Blackstone mark into Buck's skin. This was the day they would mark him as property, as a slave, as a thing that belonged to someone else instead of belonging to himself. Jake lifted the iron from the fire. It was glowing red and orange. The heat coming from it was so strong that you could feel it from far away. The end of the iron was shaped like a big B for Blackstone. When Jake pressed it into the horse's skin, it would leave a mark, a scar, a sign that Buck was now owned by Jake Redstone. Buck saw the iron coming. The horse knew what was about to happen. Animals can sense danger. They can feel pain before it comes. Buck's whole body went stiff. His muscles got tight. His breathing became very fast, almost like he was panting. His eyes got bigger and rounder. His nostrils got wider. He was completely terrified. "Please," Buck seemed to be saying without words. "Please do not do this. Please let me go. Please let me be free." But no one cared what the horse wanted. Jake stepped closer. The iron was so hot that it was starting to turn white on the edges. The heat was making the air shake and move. The smoke was getting thicker. The smell was getting worse. This was going to hurt. This was going to hurt very badly. Around the ranch yard, there were other people watching. There were the 5 men holding the ropes. There was a cook who had come out from the kitchen. There was a young boy, maybe 12 years old, who worked at the ranch cleaning things. Everyone was watching. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The young boy's name was Tommy. He was new at the ranch. He had only been working there for 2 weeks. He was poor and needed money, so he took the job. But he had not known it would be like this. He had not known that people could be so cruel to animals. He had not known that horses could suffer like this. Tommy's face was very white. He looked sick. His hands were shaking. He wanted to look away, but he could not. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. Buck made another terrible sound. It was a cry that came from deep inside him. It was the sound of fear and pain and sadness all together. It was a sound that would stay in people's heads for a long time. It was a sound that meant everything was wrong with this moment. Jake lifted the iron higher. He was going to do it. Right now, in front of everyone. He was going to burn his mark into the horse's skin. He was going to take Buck's freedom and mark it as his property. The iron moved toward the horse's side. Buck tried one more time to pull away. He pulled so hard that the ropes went tight. The wooden post creaked. Everything shook. But the ropes held him. He could not escape. He had no way to stop what was about to happen. And then something happened that nobody expected. Tommy screamed. "Stop!" the young boy shouted. His voice was very loud. Very clear. "Stop! This is wrong. You cannot do this." Everyone turned to look at him. Jake stopped moving the iron. He looked at Tommy with anger in his eyes. Nobody ever challenged Jake Redstone. Nobody ever said no to him. Nobody ever tried to stop him from doing what he wanted. "What did you say, boy?" Jake asked. His voice was very cold. Tommy was shaking with fear. His face was pale, but he did not stop. He stepped forward. "I said stop," Tommy repeated. His voice was shaking, but he kept talking. "This horse has done nothing wrong. He is not your property. He is alive. He feels pain just like we do. You cannot burn him. You cannot own him. This is wrong." The ranch yard became completely silent. All 5 men looked at Jake. The cook looked at Jake. Everyone wanted to see what Jake would do. Would he hit the boy? Would he fire him? Would he hurt him? Jake smiled. But it was not a friendly smile. "Oh," Jake said slowly. "I see we have a hero here. A boy who thinks he can tell me what to do on my own ranch." He looked at the iron in his hand. Then he looked back at Tommy. "Well, boy," Jake said, "maybe I need to teach you a lesson about respecting your boss." He moved toward Tommy, and Tommy realized he had made a terrible mistake. He had spoken up against the wrong man. Now he was in danger too.
Jake's hand came up fast. Tommy thought Jake was going to hit him. He closed his eyes and waited for the pain. His small body was ready to fall. His young mind was ready to accept that he had made a big mistake. He had spoken to the wrong man. He had challenged someone much stronger and much more dangerous than himself. But the hand did not hit him. Instead, Jake stopped. He was standing very close to Tommy now. So close that Tommy could smell him, sweat and dust, and something else that smelled like anger. Jake's face was red. His eyes were burning with rage. His jaw was very tight. He was holding the hot branding iron in his other hand, still glowing red and orange. "You think you're a brave boy?" Jake asked slowly. His voice was quiet, but it was more scary than when he was shouting. "You think you can come to my ranch and tell me what I can and cannot do?" Tommy did not answer. He could not speak. His mouth was very dry. His heart was beating so fast it felt like it would jump out of his chest. Jake moved the iron closer to Tommy's face. The heat from it was intense. Tommy could feel it on his skin. He could feel his face getting hot. He could smell the hot metal. He could see the red glow reflecting in Jake's dark eyes. This was not a joke. Jake was serious. Jake was going to hurt him. "Please," Tommy whispered. "Please do not do this." Jake laughed. It was a terrible laugh. It was a laugh that had no kindness in it. It was the laugh of someone who enjoyed hurting others. "Maybe," Jake said, "I should put my mark on you instead, boy. Then everyone will know that you belong to me. Then everyone will know not to listen to you ever again." Tommy's whole body went cold with fear. His legs felt weak. He thought he might fall down. He thought he might faint. He was going to be burned. Jake was going to burn his skin with the hot iron, just like he was going to burn Buck. But then something happened. A sound came from the direction of the barn. It was a loud sound. It was the sound of a horse neighing, very loud and very angry. Then came the sound of wood breaking. Boards were being smashed. Something big and strong was hitting the barn from the inside. Everyone turned to look. Buck was not in the barn. Buck was tied to the post in the middle of the yard. But there was another horse in the barn. His name was Storm. He was a big gray stallion, even bigger and stronger than Buck. Storm belonged to the ranch, but he was old and mean. He did not like being locked up. The sound came again. More wood broke. More boards fell. The barn door was starting to come apart. "What is that?" one of the men asked nervously. "Storm," another man answered. "He is breaking out." Jake turned away from Tommy to look at the barn. This was Tommy's chance. This was his only chance to escape. But Tommy did not run. Instead, he did something very brave and very foolish. He grabbed the branding iron. His hands reached up and grabbed Jake's wrist. Tommy was small and weak, but he had surprise on his side. Jake was not expecting the boy to fight back. For just 1 second, Jake was caught off guard. For just 1 second, his grip loosened. Tommy pulled the iron away. Jake shouted in anger. He tried to grab it back, but Tommy was already moving. Tommy threw the iron, threw it as hard as he could, toward the water barrel on the other side of the yard. The iron flew through the air. It was like time was moving slowly. Everyone could see it spinning. They could see the red glow as it moved through the morning light. They could hear it whistling as it cut through the air. And then splash. The iron hit the water barrel and went in with a huge splash. Steam came up immediately. The hot iron made the water bubble and hiss and smoke. The sound was loud. The steam was thick. For a moment, no one could see anything clearly. Jake was shouting. His men were shouting. The barn door was falling down completely as storm broke through. Everything was chaos. Everything was happening at the same time. Tommy ran. He ran toward Buck. He did not know what he was going to do. He did not have a plan. He only knew that he had to help the horse. He had to save Buck from being branded. Hold the boy, Jake shouted to his men. Do not let him near the horse. But his men were confused. They were looking at the barn where storm was breaking out. They were looking at Jake, who was angry and trying to grab another iron from the fire. They were looking at Tommy, who was running across the yard. For just a moment, no one was paying attention to Buck. Tommy reached the post where Buck was tied. The ropes were very thick and very tight. Tommy did not have a knife. He did not have anything to cut with, but he was pulling on the ropes with all his strength. He was pulling so hard that his hand were getting cut. He was pulling so hard that tears were running down his face. Come on, Buck, Tommy said to the horse. Please, we have to get away. We have to run. Buck seemed to understand. The horse was pulling too, trying to break free. His muscles were shaking. His whole body was working to escape, but the ropes would not break. They were made too strong. One of the ranchmen grabbed Tommy from behind. He lifted the boy up and carried him away from the post. Let me go, Tommy shouted. Let me go. But the man was too strong. At that exact moment, Storm came running out of the barn. The big gray stallion was wild with anger. He had been locked up too long. He had seen Buck being hurt. He had heard the terrible sounds. And now he was free, and he was very, very angry. Storm ran straight at Jake. Jake saw the horse coming. He tried to get out of the way, but it was too late. Storm was moving too fast. The horse's shoulder hit Jake hard and knocked him backward. Jake fell to the ground with a very hard thud. The air came out of his lungs. He could not breathe. He could not move. All the men stopped what they were doing. They were all looking at Jake lying on the ground. They were all looking at Storm standing over him. They were all waiting to see what would happen next. Storm looked at the ropes holding Buck. The big stallion walked over to the wooden post. He looked at the ropes. Then he did something that seemed impossible. He took one of the rope ends in his mouth and pulled. He pulled with all his strength. His muscles got big and tight. His whole body was working. And the rope, the thick, strong rope, started to come loose. Tommy watched in amazement. This was not something a horse should be able to do. But Storm was doing it. Storm was saving Buck. Storm was helping his friend escape. One rope broke. Then another rope came loose. Buck was almost free. The next morning, Buck was still tied to the post. The brand mark was on his side now. You could see it clearly. A big red be burned into his brown skin. The flesh around it was black and burned. It was a terrible sight. The skin was still hot. Smoke had stopped coming from it, but the pain had not stopped. Buck had not slept all night. He had just stood there, tied to the post, suffering. Tommy was in the barn. His face had a dark bruise on it. His left eye was almost closed. His lip was cut and bleeding. Jake had hit him. Jake had hit him many times. But Jake had not killed him. Jake had not broken his bones. Jake had just hurt him enough to teach him a lesson about speaking up. Tommy sat on the hay in the corner of the barn. He was thinking about leaving. He was thinking about running away from the ranch. He had made a big mistake yesterday. He had spoken up. He had tried to help the horse. And now he was hurt. Now he was in trouble. But then something happened. A man on a horse came riding toward the ranch. The dust rose up behind the horse as it ran fast across the desert. You could hear the hoofbeats from far away. Everyone on the ranch stopped what they were doing and looked. They did not know who this man was. The man was wearing a light-colored shirt and a wide hat. He was not young, and he was not old. His face looked kind but also strong. His eyes were sharp and smart. He looked like a man who had seen many things. A man who understood things. When he got to the ranch, he stopped his horse in front of Jake Redstone. "Are you the boss here?" the man asked. Jake came walking out his house. He looked angry. He did not like strangers coming to his ranch. "I am," Jake said. "What do you want?" The man got down from his horse slowly. He moved with confidence. This man was not afraid. "My name is Samuel Morris," the man said. "I'm a ranger. I work for the territory government. I am here about the wild horses." Jake's face turned red. "What about them?" he asked. "There have been reports," Samuel said, "about horses being treated badly on this ranch, about cruel punishment, about burning marks, about suffering. I came to see if these reports are true." Jake laughed. It was a mean, ugly laugh. "These are my horses," Jake said. "I can do what I want with them. This is my ranch. You have no power here, Ranger." But Samuel was already looking around the ranch. He could see Buck tied to the post. He could see the burned mark on the horse's skin. He could see the pain in the animal's eyes. Samuel's face became very serious. "Bring that horse to me," Samuel said. Not asked. Said, like a command. "No," Jake replied. "I will not. This horse is my property. You cannot take my property." Samuel walked slowly toward Buck. Jake moved to stop him, but Samuel put his hand on his gun. Not to pull it out, just to show that he had it, that he could use it if he needed to. Jake stepped back. Samuel walked to Buck and looked at the brand mark. He looked at the burned flesh. He looked at the horse's suffering eyes. He touched the mark gently, and Buck did not pull away. Buck let him touch it. Maybe Buck understood that this man was trying to help. "This is cruelty," Samuel said quietly. "This is a crime. In the territory, it is against the law to hurt animals like this. You have broken the law. This is my ranch," Jake said again, "and this is my horse. You have no right." "I have every right," Samuel interrupted. "I'm a ranger. The law gives me power, and the law says that animals cannot be treated this way." Samuel pulled out a knife and started to cut the ropes. The ropes fell away. Buck was free. The horse stood for a moment, not moving. He looked at the ranger. Then, very slowly, Buck walked away from the post. He walked slowly because his legs were stiff and sore. He walked slowly because the pain was still very strong. But he walked. He was free. Jake started to move toward Samuel. His hand went toward his gun, but Samuel was faster. He pulled his gun out and pointed it at Jake. "Do not move," Samuel said. His voice was calm and cold. "If you move, I will shoot. If you try to hurt this horse again, I will shoot. If you try to hurt anyone on this ranch again, I will shoot. Do you understand me?" Jake nodded slowly. He understood. Samuel turned to the other men on the ranch. "All of you listen to me," he said. "What happened here is wrong. Burning horses, hurting animals, breaking their spirits. This stops now. If I hear that it happens again, I will come back, and I will take you all to jail. Do you understand?" The men nodded. They were afraid. They had never seen anyone stand up to Jake before. Then Tommy came out of the barn. Samuel saw him. He saw the bruises on the boy's face. He saw the hurt in his eyes. "Did Jake do this to you?" Samuel asked. Tommy nodded. He could not speak. He was crying. Samuel looked at Jake with anger that burned hotter than the branding iron. "You hit a child," Samuel said. "You are worse than I thought. You are not just cruel to animals. You are cruel to people too." Samuel put handcuffs on Jake, metal cuffs that locked around his wrists. Jake tried to fight, but he could not. He was alone now. The ranger was stronger. The law was stronger. Samuel took Jake away on a horse. He took him to the jail in the town. He took him to face the judge and the law. Buck stayed on the ranch. But now things were different. The other men, the ones without the meanness of Jake in their hearts, they started to care for the horse. They gave him water. They gave him food. They put cool water on the burned mark to help it heal. They were kind to him. Tommy stayed too. He was not beaten anymore. He was not hurt anymore. He was treated fairly. He was paid for his work. He and Buck became friends. Tommy would sit with the horse in the evening and talk to him. He would brush his mane. He would tell him that he was sorry for the suffering. He would tell him that he was brave. And slowly, very slowly, Buck began to heal. The burn mark stayed on his skin forever. It was a scar. It was a reminder of the pain he had suffered, but it was also a reminder of something else. It was a reminder that there are people in the world who will stand up for what is right. People like Samuel the Ranger. People like Tommy the brave young boy. The scar on Buck's skin became a story. A story about how one boy's courage brought a stranger. A story about how a stranger brought justice. A story about how pain can lead to healing. A story about how darkness can be stopped by light. And that story would be told in the territory for many years to come. 2 months had passed since Ranger Samuel Morris took Jake Redstone away to jail. 2 months since Buck was freed from the post. 2 months since Tommy's courage changed everything. The burn mark on Buck's side had healed, but the scar remained. It was no longer red and painful. It had turned into smooth, white skin in the shape of a big B. The scar would never go away. It would stay on Buck's body forever. But now it did not hurt. Now it was just a mark of the past. A mark that showed Buck had survived. Tommy was different now, too. His face was no longer bruised. His cuts had healed, but something deeper had changed in him. He was no longer just a poor boy working on a ranch. He was a boy who had stood up for what was right. He was a boy who had helped save a horse. He was a boy who had courage inside him. Every morning, Tommy would go to the barn and find Buck waiting for him. The horse would turn his head when he heard Tommy's footsteps. Buck's eyes would light up. His ears would point forward. He was happy to see Tommy. The horse had learned to trust again. He had learned that not all humans were cruel. Not all humans wanted to hurt him. Tommy would brush Buck's coat until it shined like gold in the sunlight. He would talk to the horse while he worked. "You're going to be strong again, Buck," Tommy would say. "I promise you. Your legs are getting stronger every day. Your spirit is getting stronger too. Soon you will run again. Soon you will be free like you were before." Buck would listen. Sometimes he would make a soft sound like he understood. The other men on the ranch had changed too. Without Jake's meanness, without his cruelty, they became better people. They worked together. They helped each other. They treated the animals with kindness. The ranch that had been filled with fear and pain was now becoming a place of healing. The new boss was a man named Robert. Robert was nothing like Jake. He was fair and honest. He paid the workers good money. He did not use violence. He did not use cruelty. He treated the horses with respect. Robert saw that Tommy had a special gift with animals. So Robert gave Tommy more responsibilities. Tommy was no longer just cleaning things. Now Tommy helped care for all the horses on the ranch. One afternoon, Tommy decided to do something new. He decided to take Buck out of the barn and into the open field. "Come on, Buck," Tommy said, opening the gate. "Let's go for a walk. Let's go see the desert. Let's go see the world." Buck followed Tommy out of the barn. His legs were strong now. His muscles were big and healthy. His coat was shiny and beautiful. He looked like a different horse than the one who had been tied to that post 2 months ago. They walked through the ranch and into the open land beyond it. The desert stretched out before them. Rocks, sand, a few small bushes. The sky was big and blue and endless. The wind was blowing gently. The air smelled like freedom. Buck stopped walking and looked around. His nostrils got bigger as he smelled the desert air. His ears moved back and forth, listening to the sounds of the wild. His whole body seemed to wake up. Something inside the horse was remembering. Something inside was remembering what it was like to be free. Tommy could feel the change in Buck. "Do you remember?" Tommy whispered. "Do you remember what it was like? Before Jake? Before the ropes? When you were wild and free?" Buck turned his head and looked at Tommy. The horse's eyes were calm, but also sad. It was like Buck was saying thank you, but also goodbye. "I understand," Tommy said. His eyes started to fill with tears. "I know you want to go back. I know you want to be free again, and I'm going to let you go." Tommy unbuckled the rope that was around Buck's neck. The rope fell away. Buck was free, really free. Not just free from the ropes on the ranch. Free to run, free to go, free to choose his own path. For a moment, Buck did not move. He stood very still. He looked at Tommy. The horse and the boy looked at each other for a long time. It was like they were saying goodbye without words. Like they were telling each other about their friendship. Like they were saying thank you. Then Buck turned toward the desert. He started to walk, slowly at first, then faster. Then he began to run. His legs moved like they were flying. His mane blew in the wind. His body moved with power and beauty. The scar on his side shined white in the sunlight. Buck ran faster and faster. He ran toward the mountains. He ran toward the wild places. He ran toward other horses and open space. He ran toward his old life, his real life, his free life. Tommy watched him run. The tears came down Tommy's face, but he was smiling. He was sad because Buck was leaving, but he was happy because Buck was free. He was sad because he would miss his friend, but he was happy because the horse had gotten his life back. Buck reached the edge of the ranch land and disappeared into the desert. Tommy could still see the white scar shining in the distance. The white mark of the Blackstone Ranch. The mark that showed Buck had suffered. The mark that showed Buck had survived. The mark that showed Buck was strong. Then Buck was gone. The desert wind blew across Tommy's face. The boy stood alone in the open field. Around him was nothing but rocks and sand and sky. But he did not feel alone. He felt Buck's spirit still with him. He felt the connection they had made. That night, in the barn, Tommy told Robert what he had done. "I let Buck go," Tommy said. "I set him free. I know he was valuable. I know he was worth a lot of money. But he needed to be free more than we needed money. I hope you are not angry with me." Robert looked at Tommy for a long time. Then he smiled. "No, Tommy," Robert said. "I'm not angry. I am proud of you. What you did was right. That horse suffered enough. He deserved to be free. You did a good thing." Robert put his hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You know what?" Robert continued. "You have a gift. You understand animals. You care about living things. You do the right thing even when it is hard. I want to teach you the ranch business. I want you to become a manager here. A good manager. A kind manager. Someone who cares about horses and people both." Tommy's eyes got big with surprise. "Really?" he asked. "Really," Robert said. "You have earned it. You have earned it by being brave and kind and honest." Months later, travelers in the desert started to tell stories. They told stories about a wild horse with a white scar on his side. A horse that ran free in the mountains with a herd of wild mustangs. A horse that was beautiful and strong and lived without fear. A horse that had been saved by a brave young boy. And Tommy heard these stories. Every time he heard them, he smiled. He knew that Buck was happy. He knew that his friend was free. He knew that his courage had changed a life. And that made everything worth it. 5 years had passed. 5 years since Tommy set Buck free into the desert. 5 years since a brave boy's courage changed everything. 5 years of healing. 5 years of growth. 5 years of transformation. The Blackstone Ranch was not called that anymore. Robert had changed the name to the Morris Ranch, named after Ranger Samuel Morris, the man who brought justice and stopped the cruelty. The ranch was now known across the entire territory as a place of kindness. A place where horses were treated fairly. A place where workers were paid well and treated with respect. A place where animals were cared for with love instead of fear. Tommy was no longer a poor boy doing simple jobs. He was now the manager of the ranch. He was 21 years old. He was strong and smart. His face had lost the look of suffering and pain. Now it showed confidence and wisdom. Tommy wore fine clothes and rode a good horse. But he had not forgotten where he came from. He had not forgotten the pain. He had not forgotten Buck. Every evening, Tommy would walk to the edge of the ranch and look out toward the mountains. He would look at the desert where he had set Buck free. He would wonder if the horse was happy. He would wonder if Buck was running free with other wild horses. He would wonder if his old friend ever thought about him. One day in early spring, something unusual happened. Tommy was riding his horse across the ranch, checking on the animals. He was making sure all the fences were strong. He was making sure all the water troughs were clean. This was his job now. He was responsible for everything. As he rode, he saw something strange in the distance. There was a group of wild horses at the edge of the ranch land. They must have come down from the mountains looking for water and fresh grass. This happened sometimes. Wild horses would come close to the ranch. Usually, they would run away if they saw humans. But this group was not running. They seemed to be waiting. Tommy rode closer slowly. He did not want to scare them. As he got nearer, he could see them better. There were about 10 wild horses. They were beautiful animals with long manes and powerful muscles. They were healthy and strong. They were living free, the way horses were meant to live. Then Tommy saw something that made his heart stop. One of the horses was different. One of the horses had a white mark on his side, a scar-shaped mark, a mark shaped like the letter B. It was Buck. Tommy could not believe it. He stopped his horse and stared. It was definitely Buck. Older now. His coat was darker from the sun. His muscles were even bigger and stronger. But it was definitely him. Tommy would know Buck anywhere. He would recognize him even if he saw him in complete darkness. Buck was the leader of the wild horses. He stood in front of the group. The other horses looked to him. They moved when he moved. They listened when he made sounds. Buck was the leader. Buck was the king of these wild horses. Buck was free and powerful and exactly where he belonged. Tommy could see the scar on Buck's side, clearly from where he sat on his horse. The burn mark from the branding iron. The mark that showed suffering. The mark that showed pain survived. The white scar that would never disappear. Buck lifted his head and looked at Tommy. The horse did not run away. The horse did not move toward Tommy either. Buck simply looked at the young man with eyes that were calm and knowing. It was like Buck was saying, "I remember you. I remember what you did. I remember your kindness. But I am happy here now. I am happy in my life." Tommy's eyes filled with tears. He did not move. He did not want to scare the horses. He just sat on his horse and looked at his old friend. Memories came flooding back. Memories of the barn. Memories of brushing Buck's mane. Memories of the day he set the horse free. Memories of the hard times and the good times. Buck turned and looked at the other wild horses. He made a sound, a soft whinny that meant friendship and peace. The group of wild horses turned and started to walk away. They walked slowly. They were not running in fear. They were simply going back to their wild lives. Back to the mountains. Back to their freedom. But Buck did not go with them right away. Buck stayed for a moment longer. He looked at Tommy one more time. The horse's eyes were kind and grateful. It was like Buck was saying, "Thank you. Thank you for setting me free. Thank you for loving me when I was suffering. Thank you for teaching me that humans could be kind." Then Buck turned and ran after the other horses. He ran toward the mountains. His body moved with power and grace. The white scar on his side shined in the sunlight like a light, like a memory, like a mark of survival and strength. Tommy watched until Buck disappeared into the distance. That night, Tommy sat by the fire and told Robert what he had seen. "I saw Buck today," Tommy said quietly. "He came to the edge of the ranch. He was the leader of a group of wild horses. He was happy, I think. Really happy." Robert listened without interrupting. "The scar is still there," Tommy continued. "The burn mark. It will always be there. But it does not matter anymore. Buck has his life back. Buck is free. Buck is exactly what he was meant to be." Robert nodded slowly. "That is a good ending," Robert said. "A real good ending. That horse suffered, but he survived. And now he is living the life he was meant to live. That is more than most creatures get. That is something special." Tommy stood up and walked to the door of the house. He looked out at the starry sky. The stars were bright and clear. The desert was peaceful and quiet. Somewhere out there, Buck was running free. Somewhere out there, the horse was living his life without fear, without pain, without cruelty. And Tommy knew that he had done the right thing. Years later, when Tommy was old, he would tell this story to young people who came to work on the Morse Ranch. He would tell them about a horse named Buck. He would tell them about a boy who was brave enough to stand up to a cruel man. He would tell them about freedom and kindness and the power of love. And he would always end the story the same way. That scar on Buck's side, that mark shaped like AB, it was supposed to mean that the horse belonged to someone else. It was supposed to be a sign of slavery, but it became something different. It became a sign of survival. It became a mark that showed Buck was strong enough to overcome his pain. It became a symbol of freedom won. And Buck earned that freedom through suffering, yes, but also through the kindness of a brave boy who believed that all living things deserve to be free. The story of Tommy and Buck became a legend in the Wild West. People would tell it around campfires. Parents would tell it to their children. It was a story about cruelty and justice. It was a story about courage and kindness. It was a story about one boy who changed everything by standing up for what was right. And somewhere in the mountains, a wild horse with a white scar on his side ran free, leading his herd, living his life, proving that freedom, once found, could never be taken away. The scar remained, but the pain was gone. And that made all the difference.